The bridge of the Zalosian Grand Cruiser Eternal Authority hummed with the quiet precision of a species that had conquered 17 star systems through overwhelming force. Grand Admiral Threx stood at the command podium, his four-jointed fingers resting on the tactical display as his fleet completed another provocative sweep along the Terran border. The humans had been expanding too quickly, their diplomatic core too clever, their economic growth too aggressive. A show of strength had been deemed necessary by the Council of Claws. Communications Officer V. turned from her station, her secondary eyelids flickering with confusion. Grand Admiral, we are receiving a direct transmission from a Terran diplomatic vessel. It is unusual. Threx's mandibles clicked once, the Zalosian equivalent of mild irritation. Define unusual. The transmission originates from a vessel designated TSV Recess. It is a single-occupant craft. The occupant is transmitting on all standard trade frequencies with priority clearance codes. One occupant, an ambassador. Vril's head crest flattened in a gesture of uncertainty. The biometric scans indicate the occupant is a juvenile human female, approximate age, 9 Terran years. The bridge went quiet, not the dramatic silence of shock, but the confused quiet of a crew recalibrating their assumptions. Zalosian children were kept in brood chambers until their carapaces hardened at age 12. The concept of a child operating a spacecraft alone was alien to them in the most fundamental way. "Put her through," Threx commanded. The main viewscreen flickered, and the image that appeared defied every expectation. The human child had dark hair pulled back in a utilitarian knot. She wore what appeared to be a standard Terran diplomatic uniform, tailored to her small frame. Behind her, the interior of her vessel was visible, a cramped cockpit with a single seat, several datapads floating in magnetic holders, and what appeared to be a half-eaten nutrition bar stuck to one console with adhesive tape. She looked at the viewscreen with an expression of absolute seriousness. "Grand Admiral Threx of the Zalosian Expansionary Fleet, I am Ambassador Prime Mara Venn of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I am contacting you regarding your war-class starcruiser, hull designation Sovereign's Wrath." Threx's mandibles spread in what a human might interpret as amusement. "And what interest does a human child have in our flagship?" Mara Venn did not smile. She reached off-screen and retrieved a datapad, consulting it with practiced efficiency. "I am prepared to offer 143 Galactic Standard credits for the immediate and permanent transfer of the Sovereign's Wrath to my personal possession." The tactical officer, Subcommander Krex, made a sound that was half joke, half laugh. 143 credits. That is less than the cost of a nutrient pack in most stations. Mara's eyes shifted to Krex, and something in her gaze made the subcommander's laugh die in his throat. 143 credits represents the precise current market value of the Sovereign's Wrath when accounting for accumulated battle damage, outdated reactor shielding, structural fatigue to the primary support beams, and the psychological depreciation resulting from 3 failed border intimidation maneuvers in the past 4 months. I am offering a fair price. Threx straightened to his full height. "You mock the Zalosian Expansionary Fleet, human child." "I am Ambassador Prime Mara Venn. I do not mock, I negotiate." She tapped her datapad, and a detailed schematic of the Sovereign's Wrath appeared on a secondary channel. Red markers highlighted stress fractures in the hull. Yellow markers indicated software vulnerabilities. Orange markers pinpointed crew morale ratings that the Zalosians did not realize had been quantified. Vril's voice cracked. "Grand Admiral, she is accessing our classified engineering database. Those stress readings are level 7 secure." Threx felt the first cold tendril of unease wrap around his thorax. "How did you obtain those files?" Mara blinked once, slowly, as if the question was so obvious it barely warranted response. "I did the math. Your encryption protocols are based on Zalosian numerical systems. I converted them to base-10 arithmetic and the firewalls folded in under 4 minutes. Honestly, it was disappointing. I expected more from a species that claims military superiority over this sector. She leaned forward in her seat, and the movement brought her face closer to the visual pickup. Her eyes, Threx noticed, were not the eyes of a child playing a game. They were the eyes of someone performing a function that had been rehearsed 1,000 times. 143 credits. Take it or leave it. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Eternal Authority, no one spoke for a long moment. Then Krex, his voice barely above a whisper, said what everyone was thinking. What are humans? Part 2. Grand Admiral Threx ordered a full tactical analysis before responding to the human child's transmission. The results cascaded across his command display with alarming speed. The stress fractures Venn had identified were not only real, they were worse than even the Xylosian Engineering Corps had documented. 3 primary support beams in the Sovereign's Wrath showed fatigue levels that should have grounded the vessel months ago. The reactor shielding had degraded 11% below recommended safety thresholds. How does a human child possess better intelligence on our fleet than our own maintenance division? Threx demanded. Viril's head crest had flattened completely against her skull. Grand Admiral, I traced the data path. She did not hack our engineering database. She accessed our supply chain manifests, repair schedules, and raw material requisitions from the past 3 standard years. She then extrapolated the structural integrity of every vessel in our fleet based on known metallurgical properties of Xylosian hull alloys and the documented time-to-failure curves for our reactor shielding materials. She predicted the damage through logistics data. She did the math, Grand Admiral, all of it. The girl did nothing but math. Threx reopened the communication channel. Venn's face reappeared on the view screen with the same patient expression she had worn before. You have questions, she said. It was not a query. It was an observation delivered with the clinical detachment of someone who had anticipated this exact moment. You accessed our supply manifests. You predicted our fleet's structural integrity from cargo records. The Sovereign's Wrath received its last major hull repair 212 standard days ago. The materials requisitioned were 23% below the amount required for a full restoration. This indicated either corruption in your logistics core or a deliberate decision to prioritize cosmetic repairs over structural integrity. Either explanation is tactically relevant. Threx felt his thorax tighten. The Council of Claws had indeed ordered cosmetic-only repairs to maintain the fleet's intimidating appearance during the border campaign. The decision was supposed to be known only to the highest levels of command. Your offer of 143 credits, he said slowly. Explain your calculation. Mara nodded, the gesture efficient rather than polite. Base scrap value of the Sovereign's Wrath based on Xylosian alloys at current market rates, 206 credits. Subtract 47 credits for the cost of safely decommissioning the compromised reactor. Subtract 12 credits for environmental reclamation of your fuel systems, which leak radiation at a rate of 0.3 millisieverts per standard day. Subtract 4 credits for the psychological impact on your crew. The Sovereign's Wrath has the lowest morale rating in your fleet, which translates to decreased combat effectiveness valued at approximately 4 credits of lost tactical output. She paused, consulting her datapad. That brings us to 143. I rounded down. Tactical Officer Krex stepped forward, his voice shaking. You rounded down. Generosity is a cornerstone of human diplomacy. The bridge of the Eternal Authority had never felt so cold. The Xylosians were a species that respected strength, that measured worth through displays of overwhelming force. They had entered this border dispute expecting the humans to posture, to threaten, to deploy their own warships in a mirror of Xylosian aggression. They had prepared for bluster and brinkmanship. They had not prepared for a child who did math. Your offer is rejected, Threx stated. The Sovereign's Wrath is not for sale, and I do not negotiate with juvenile members of prey species. Mara's expression did not change. She reached off-screen and retrieved another datapad, or perhaps the same one. Threx could not tell. I am required by Terran diplomatic protocol to inform you that this offer constitutes humanity's first and most generous attempt at peaceful resolution. You have 14 standard minutes to reconsider before I am authorized to escalate. Escalate? Krex laughed, but the sound was hollow. You are one human child in a vessel smaller than our escape pods. What possible escalation could you? I will double the offer to 286 credits, contingent on the Sovereign's wrath being delivered with a full complement of navigation charts for Xylosian restricted space, including the coordinates of your homeworld defense platforms, the patrol schedules of your border fleets, and the access codes for your Council of Claws emergency channels. The bridge went cold. She knew about the restricted navigation charts. She knew about the defense platforms. She knew about the emergency channels, channels that were not supposed to exist on any external database, channels that were hardwired into Xylosian vessels during construction and never transmitted across any network. How do you know about the emergency channels? Vril whispered. Mara looked directly into the visual pickup. I told you, I did the math. Math cannot reveal classified communication protocols. Your emergency channels operate on a frequency band that requires precisely 7.4 terawatts of power to reach your homeworld from this position. Your civilian communication relays consume exactly 7.4 terawatts of power during their off-cycle maintenance windows. The correlation was obvious once I cross-referenced your fleet positioning with your civilian infrastructure power draws over the past 6 months. You use your own people's communication networks as relays for your military signals. It is clever, but it leaves a footprint. Everything leaves a footprint. Threx raised a closed fist, the signal for absolute silence. The bridge crew froze. He studied the human child on his view screen, the small frame, the plain uniform, the nutrition bar still stuck to the console behind her. She was not what she appeared to be. That much was clear. But what she actually was remained terrifyingly opaque. What are you? He asked, abandoning all pretense of diplomatic language. Mara Venn, Ambassador Prime of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, age 9, tilted her head slightly. I am the person my government sends when they want to give the other side a chance. You should hope you never meet the person they send when they do not. She tapped her datapad. 13 minutes remaining. Part 3. The Eternal Authority's intelligence division worked at frantic speed, pulling every scrap of data they could find on the Terran Diplomatic Corps and its Ambassador Prime program. What they discovered shattered every assumption the Xylosians had made about human negotiation tactics. The Terran Initiative for Diplomatic Nuance, known internally as Project Crayon, had been established 42 years earlier following humanity's disastrous first contact with the Venn coalition. The Venn, a species that communicated entirely through threat displays, had interpreted humanity's military negotiators as challengers and responded with overwhelming force. The war had lasted 6 months and cost both sides heavily before a human cultural anthropologist, named Dr. Amara Venn, discovered that the Venn responded to perceived vulnerability with protective instincts rather than aggression. The solution had been elegantly horrifying. Humanity would train its most crucial negotiators to weaponize the appearance of harmlessness. Children, elders, individuals who appeared physically unremarkable, soft, non-threatening, each one trained from an early age in advanced mathematics, game theory, psychological warfare, and the cold calculus of leverage. They were not soldiers pretending to be civilians. They were diplomatic operatives who had never been anything else, their entire identities constructed around the principle that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy was an enemy you could not bring yourself to fear. Sub-Commander Krex read the file with growing horror. Grand Admiral, the Venn Coalition surrendered unconditionally 6 months after the Crayon program went active. They signed away 30% of their territory in exchange for what they described as a perfectly fair deal. The negotiator was a 73-year-old human woman who brought them home-baked goods during the sessions. Baked goods. Flour, sugar, thermal processing. Apparently, the Venn found the gesture culturally significant. They did not realize until afterward that the trade agreements they signed gave humanity control of their primary fuel supply routes. Threx pulled up the file on Mara Venn specifically. Born in a diplomatic training facility on Luna. Began calculus at age 3. Completed her first trade negotiation, a dispute over mining rights in the Kepler-22 system, at age 6. Her success rate was 100% across 37 assignments. 37 assignments. 37 species that had sat across from this child and underestimated her. "We are not the Venn," Threx said firmly. "We will not be charmed by a child's appearance." "Grand Admiral," Viril said quietly, "that is what the Venn said." The communication channel reactivated. Mara Venn's face appeared on the view screen, and behind her, Threx noticed something new, a display showing the Eternal Authority's current position relative to the Terran border, overlaid with what appeared to be trajectory calculations. 9 minutes remaining, she said. I want to add something to the negotiation. You are in no position to add conditions. I am adding information, not conditions. That information is this. 3 hours ago, your fleet passed through a debris field in Sector 7. That debris field contained approximately 12,000 kinetic kill vehicles, cold-launched projectiles with no active guidance systems, no energy signatures, and no detectable emissions. They are currently maintaining position at a distance of 400 kilometers from each of your vessels. Their targeting solutions have been calculated and locked. Krex rushed to his tactical station, fingers flying across the controls. Grand Admiral, I am reading no active threats. There is nothing out there. They are cold, Mara said patiently. They have no power sources, no transmitters, no emissions of any kind. They are simply rocks with precise mass and trajectory calculations. You cannot detect them because there is nothing to detect. They exist only as mathematical probabilities until the moment they intersect with your hulls at velocities exceeding 12 kilometers per second. You are bluffing, Threx said. I am required by Terran diplomatic protocol to inform you that I never bluff. Bluffing introduces uncertainty into negotiations. I deal exclusively in certainties. She tapped her datapad, and the trajectory display behind her shifted to show the Sovereign's wrath highlighted in red. Would you like me to demonstrate on the vessel I am attempting to purchase? I am willing to destroy my own acquisition if it helps establish credibility. Threx stared at the display, at the calm face of the child, who had just offered to annihilate a warship to prove a point. This is not negotiation, he said. This is extortion. Extortion implies coercion for personal gain. I am offering you a fair price for a damaged vessel and providing you with information that may prevent the destruction of your fleet. If anything, this is a public service. 8 minutes remaining. Part 4. Grand Admiral Threx had commanded fleets for 47 standard years. He had crushed the Skarn Rebellion, broken the blockade of Melis Prime, and personally overseen the subjugation of 3 sentient species. He had faced enemy commanders who screamed defiance, who wept for mercy, who fought with the desperate fury of beings with nothing left to lose. He had never faced anyone like Mara Venn. You claim there are kinetic kill vehicles surrounding my fleet, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. If this were true, you would not be negotiating. You would have destroyed us already. Destruction is inefficient. Acquiring a war-class starcruiser with intact navigation databases is more valuable to Earth's strategic position than creating a debris field in this sector. I am offering you the opportunity to trade military hardware for your lives. It is a favorable exchange. You expect me to believe that a child. I expect you to believe your tactical displays, Mara interrupted, and for the first time, a hint of something sharp entered her voice. Subcommander Krex, run a passive mass detection sweep of Sector 7, focusing on objects with high density and irregular shapes that match the debris field your fleet navigated 3 hours ago. Filter for objects that have maintained a constant distance from your vessels despite your maneuvering. Krex looked to Threx for permission. The Grand Admiral nodded once. The results appeared on the main tactical display within seconds. 12,407 objects, all maintaining precise formation at 400 kilometers from each Xylosian vessel, all perfectly cold, all moving in exact synchronization with the fleet's course changes. Krex's voice was barely audible. They are real. They are all real. Of course they are real, Mara said. I told you I do not bluff. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers shouted updates, damage control teams were mobilized, and the fleet's defensive systems were brought to full readiness. But every officer on the bridge knew the terrible truth. There was no defense against kinetic kill vehicles that were already in position. The projectiles were too close, too numerous, too perfectly placed. If even a fraction of them were activated, the Xylosian fleet would be shredded before a single countermeasure could deploy. Threx raised his fist again, demanding silence. The bridge quieted immediately. You said this was a one-time opportunity, he said. Explain. Mara nodded, the gesture carrying the weight of someone who had reached the part of the script she had prepared hours ago. Human diplomatic doctrine operates on a principle we call the escalation ladder. Step 1. We offer a peaceful resolution on terms favorable to both parties. Step 2. We reveal the consequences of rejecting that resolution. Step 3. She paused and something flickered in her expression. Something that might have been sadness or might have been its complete absence. Step 3 is not my department. You would destroy an entire fleet over a failed negotiation. I would not destroy anything. I am 9 years old. I do not have authorization to initiate kinetic strikes. The automated defense network that has been tracking your fleet since you entered Terran space, however, has no such restrictions. If I do not transmit a negotiated resolution within the time limit, the network defaults to its base programming. And its base programming, Grand Admiral, is to eliminate all threats to human territory with maximum efficiency. Threx understood then. The child was not the threat. The child was the safety mechanism. She was the last chance to stop something that had already been set in motion. Your defense network would start a war. Your war started the moment you crossed our border with hostile intent. I am offering you a way to end it before anyone dies. That is not a threat. That is a gift. Threx looked at his bridge crew, at Viril's trembling head crest, at Krex's hollow gaze, at the dozen other officers who had followed him into battle without question, and who now faced an enemy they could not fight, could not intimidate, could not even comprehend. 7 minutes, Mara said. The offer stands. 143 credits for the Sovereign's wrath. The price is fair. The math is sound. The choice is yours. She leaned back in her seat, and for the briefest moment, she looked exactly like what she was. A tired child who had been doing this for far too long. Please choose wisely. I have a math test tomorrow, and I would prefer to get some sleep. Part 5. The Xylosian fleet hung in the void like a wounded creature waiting for the killing blow. On the bridge of the Eternal Authority, Grand Admiral Threx faced the impossible calculus of surrender. The navigation charts she requested, he said quietly. If we transfer them, we give humanity the location of our homeworld, our defense platforms, our entire strategic infrastructure. And if we do not transfer them, Krex replied, 12,000 kinetic impactors turn our fleet into a debris field, and humanity recovers the navigation data from our wreckage anyway. The outcome is identical. Only the cost differs. Threx's mandibles clenched so tightly they ached. 47 years of command. 47 years of victory after victory. And now he was being defeated by arithmetic. Open the channel. Mara Venn's face reappeared. She had not moved. The nutrition bar was still stuck to her console. The datapad still floated in their magnetic holders. She looked, Threx realized, exactly as she had at the start of the negotiation, patient, professional, utterly unshakable. You have reached a decision. The Sovereign's wrath will be transferred to your control. The navigation databases will be included. A wise choice. I will initiate the credit transfer immediately. No. Mara paused, her finger hovering over her datapad. I am sorry. Not 143 credits, 206. For the first time since the negotiation began, something shifted in Mara's expression. It was subtle, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a fractional tilt of the head. But Threx saw it, and he understood that he had finally surprised her. The base scrap value, he continued. You calculated it yourself, 206 credits. You deducted costs for decommissioning, environmental reclamation, and crew morale. But those costs are my responsibility, not yours. If I am selling you a vessel, I am selling it as is. You pay the full scrap value. Mara was silent for 3 full seconds, an eternity for someone who processed information at her speed. You are negotiating. I am a Grand Admiral of the Xylosian Expansionary Fleet. I have not survived 47 years of warfare without learning something about leverage. You want the Sovereign's wrath for its navigation databases, not its hull. The databases are worth far more than 206 credits to you. I am asking for a fair price in return. Krex stared at his commander with undisguised awe. Viril's head crest actually rose a fraction. After the horror of the past hour, their Grand Admiral had found a way to push back. Mara's eyes flicked across her datapad, running calculations at speeds the Xylosians could only guess at. Then she looked up, and the ghost of something that might have been respect crossed her features. The navigation databases contain partial information. Your fleet's patrol schedules will be outdated within 3 standard weeks. Your defense platform coordinates do not include the mobile platforms that shift position every 17 days. You are giving me valuable intelligence, but not the full picture. 187 credits is my counteroffer. 195. 190, that is my final offer. Threx considered. He had entered the negotiation facing total annihilation. He was leaving it with a financial transaction that, while humiliating, allowed him to preserve his fleet and his crew. And he had demonstrated that even against humanity's most terrifying diplomatic weapon, a Xylosian commander could still fight. 190 credits, accepted. Mara tapped her datapad. Transfer initiated. The Sovereign's wrath is now my personal property. I am transmitting new course coordinates for your fleet. You will depart Terran space immediately. The kinetic kill vehicles will maintain their positions until you cross the border. The transaction appeared on the bridge's financial display. 190 Galactic Standard credits, transferred from a personal account registered to Mara Venn, Ambassador Prime, to the Xylosian Expansionary Fleet's central treasury. A child had just purchased a warship, with pocket money. Grand Admiral, Mara said, her voice carrying a note that Threx had not heard before. You negotiated well, most do not. Most are too afraid to try. You would be surprised how many species cannot overcome that fear. She paused. The math test I mentioned, it was not a lie. I do have one tomorrow, but I wanted you to know something before you leave. And what is that? The test is on theoretical physics. Specifically, the mathematics of faster-than-light travel through folded spacetime. The navigation charts you just transferred include classified Xylosian research on a new FTL drive configuration that your fleet has been field testing. I noticed the drive signatures during our initial scan, but I could not confirm the underlying mathematics without the navigation data. Threx felt his blood run cold. You purchased the Sovereign's wrath for our propulsion research. I purchased it for everything, the hull, the weapons, the navigation charts, the drive research. But yes, the propulsion data was the most valuable component. My math test will be considerably easier now. Thank you for your contribution to human scientific advancement. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Eternal Authority, Grand Admiral Threx stood motionless as the full scope of what had just occurred settled over him. He had negotiated. He had fought back. He had secured a better price. And in doing so, he had handed humanity the keys to the next generation of faster-than-light travel, without ever realizing what he was giving away. "Set course for the border," he ordered, his voice hollow. "Maximum speed. Do not look back." Part 6. The Eternal Authority and its escort fleet limped across the Terran border like a procession of ghosts. Every officer on every bridge watched their sensor displays with the fixed intensity of beings who knew they were surrounded by invisible death. The kinetic kill vehicles maintained their positions with mathematical precision, matching every course adjustment, never drifting closer, never falling behind. They were, Krex observed, like an equation given physical form: cold, patient, inevitable. "Grand Admiral," Viril said, "we are receiving a final transmission from the human vessel." Threx did not turn from the viewscreen. "Put it through." Mara Venn's face appeared, but something had changed. The professional mask had slipped slightly, revealing what lay beneath: exhaustion, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like compassion. "Your fleet has cleared the Terran exclusion zone. The kinetic kill vehicles are being deactivated. You are free to return to Zalosian space. The projectiles will not follow us." "They cannot. They are just rocks, Grand Admiral. Precisely positioned rocks, but rocks nonetheless. They have no propulsion, no guidance, no power. Once you pass beyond their intercept trajectories, they will drift harmlessly until our recovery teams collect them for future use." Threx absorbed this information. The weapons that had held his entire fleet hostage were literally nothing more than carefully placed stones. The simplest possible technology, deployed with such perfect strategic calculation that it had defeated the most advanced warships in the Zalosian arsenal. "I have a question," Threx said, "before we part ways." "You may ask it." "Are you really 9 years old?" Mara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than it had been throughout the entire negotiation. "I was born 9 years ago. I have been training for this work since I could walk. I have negotiated with 37 species across 42 assignments. I have never lost a negotiation. I have never had to escalate to Step 3. She paused. "I hope I never do." Step 3. The person they send when they do not want to give the other side a chance. Correct. What happens if Step 3 is activated? Mara looked directly into the visual pickup, and Threx saw something in her eyes that he had missed before. It was not coldness. It was not calculation. It was a profound and bone-deep weariness that belonged to someone who had seen too much, understood too much, carried too much. "I am not authorized to discuss Step 3 protocols with non-Terran personnel. What I can tell you is this. I have met the individuals who work in that division. I have trained alongside them, and I would rather purchase 1,000 warships with my own allowance than ever see them deployed." She leaned back in her seat, and the mask of the Ambassador Prime settled back into place. "Go home, Grand Admiral. Tell your Council of Claws what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not interested in conquest or subjugation. We are interested in being left alone to pursue our own development. But if we cannot have peace, we are willing to purchase it. And we have very deep pockets." The transmission ended. Threx stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the most advanced military technology the Zalosian species had ever created, and felt utterly, completely defeated. Not by weapons, not by tactics, not by any of the measures he had spent his life mastering. By a child who had done the math. "Set course for the homeworld," he ordered, "and prepare a full report for the Council, every detail, every word. They need to understand what we are dealing with." Viril hesitated. "Grand Admiral, the report. It will cause panic. The Council will not believe that a human juvenile outmaneuvered our entire fleet. They will believe it when they see the transfer records: 190 credits, a warship, our navigation databases, our propulsion research. Threx's mandibles clicked in the Zalosian equivalent of bitter laughter. They will believe it because the evidence is undeniable. Humanity did not defeat us with weapons. They defeated us with an equation. Part 7. The TSV recess drifted in the void where the Zalosian fleet had been, a tiny vessel against the infinite black. Inside, Mara Venn sat motionless for a long moment after the transmission ended. Then she reached up, pulled the elastic band from her hair, and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for hours. "Recess to home plate," she said, her voice now carrying the casual exhaustion of a child who had just finished a particularly difficult homework assignment. "Negotiation complete. The Sovereign's wrath has been acquired. Fleet is withdrawing." The voice that responded was warm, maternal, and carried the unmistakable accent of someone who had grown up in the Himalayan orbital colonies. "Good work, Mara. Your mother would be proud." "My mother would be furious that I let him negotiate me up to 190. A soft laugh crackled through the speaker. "Your mother once paid 300 credits for a decommissioned freighter that turned out to be full of smuggled weapons. You did fine. Now come home. Your brother is waiting to hear about the FTL data." Mara smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face from diplomatic weapon to ordinary child. "Tell him I got the complete drive configurations. He owes me dessert for a month." "Copy that, recess. See you soon." The communication channel closed, and Mara was alone with her thoughts. She looked at the datapads floating around her, at the half-eaten nutrition bar still stuck to the console, at the display showing the newly acquired Sovereign's Wrath, now renamed the Allowance, being boarded by Terran engineering teams. 190 credits, a war-class star cruiser, navigation charts for an entire hostile empire, and the key to the next breakthrough in faster-than-light propulsion. Not bad for a day's work. She thought about Grand Admiral Threx, about the moment he had pushed back on her offer and felt something unusual: respect. Most species crumbled when confronted with the full scope of human diplomatic strategy. They saw a child, heard the calm recitation of facts and figures, understood the mathematical precision of their own destruction, and simply folded. Threx had not folded. He had found a sliver of leverage and used it. The negotiation had cost Mara an extra 47 credits, which she would have to explain to the budget committee, but it had been worth it. The propulsion data was genuine. The navigation charts were comprehensive, and she had gained something that could not be measured in credits: insight into how Zalosian commanders thought under pressure. That data would go into the Crayon program's psychological profiles, and the next time a Zalosian fleet tested Terran borders, humanity's negotiators would be even better prepared. Assuming there was a next time. Mara hoped there would not be. She hoped the Council of Claws would study Threx's report and reach the same conclusion that 37 other species had reached: that humanity was not an enemy to be conquered, but a force to be respected; that the cost of aggression far outweighed any possible gain; that the child on the view screen was offering them the best deal they would ever get. She knew that hope was probably naive. Most species needed multiple demonstrations before the lesson truly sank in. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight she had a math test to study for, a brother to tease about dessert, and a newly acquired warship to inspect. The Allowance was her ship now, purchased with her own credits, registered in her own name. She planned to paint it purple. "Recess to home plate," she said, reactivating the channel. "Requesting course clearance for return to Luna. And can someone make sure there's hot chocolate waiting? The good kind, not the mess hall stuff." "Copy that, recess. Hot chocolate is on the board. Welcome home, Ambassador Prime." Mara Venn guided her tiny vessel toward the distant blue-white marble of Earth, leaving behind the retreating Zalosian fleet and 12,000 cold stones drifting in the void. She was 9 years old. She had just purchased a warship with her allowance, and somewhere in the galaxy, on the bridge of a humbled flagship, a Grand Admiral was beginning to understand that humanity, did not need to conquer the stars. They would simply buy them, one fair deal at a time. And, in the years that followed, the Zalosian expansionary fleet never again crossed the Terran border. The Council of Claws declassified Threx's report and distributed it to every command-level officer in their military. It became required reading at their war colleges, studied by generations of Zalosian strategists who struggled to understand how a child with a datapad had accomplished what entire armadas could not. The report's title, translated roughly from the Zalosian, was "She Did the Math." Mara Venn continued her diplomatic work until age 17, when she retired from the Crayon program to pursue a doctorate in theoretical physics. Her dissertation on folded spacetime propulsion, based partly on data acquired during the purchase of the Allowance, revolutionized human FTL capabilities and ushered in a new era of Terran exploration. She never did fail a math test.